Okay, payroll is managed in the HR module on the employed tab, which is the first with all your employee records, and the payroll tab. On the payroll tab is where you do monthly batches, or if it's a fortnight batch, this is where you create pay slips. So pay slips are best created in batch rather than manually on the employee record. It just helps you to bring things together. It's a better workflow, it's simpler, and it prevents mistakes. So to do a new batch, we will just use this option, new batch. We select the type of batch, because this depends which employees are included in this batch. The pay type would usually be fixed unless somebody works on pays on shifts or is a contractor paying per hour. So fixed, and in our case we'll choose monthly. Then the pay date is the actual date that the salary is paid. Let's set it to today. And your range, mostly important when you do shifts or hours, which will usually be the first and to the last of the current month. And then finally select a bank account from which you'll be paying these pay slips. Once you've created your batch, it'll show up in the list with a status of open. You can click the ID to enter that specific batch. You'll see the status is open. If you do need to make some adjustments, you can update your parameters in here. And below this button you'll see a list of employees that will be included in this batch. If this is correct, you'll click confirm and generate payslips, and it then goes ahead and generates payslips for these employees, which is much simpler than doing it manually one by one on the employee record. In the list at the bottom, you can click the person's name to open their employee account in a different tab, or you can click the payslip if you do need to make changes to this specific payslip. It'll also open in a different tab. I'll click this one, payslip 4, and on this payslip I can then go and change the basic earnings if it's for once-off a reason. I can add additional earnings and deductions to this payslip only. I can do cash changes like advances and certain expense reimbursements and things like that on the specific month. And then I can add notes to this payslip only. If I want to add a note to all payslips for an employee, I'll do that on the employee's account. I can also make notes which are internal notes based on this payslip, and I can delete it if needed. Back to the pay batch, it's important to verify the amount in this column. We'll see that there aren't any tax figures in here. It's because we have not done the update remuneration and taxes. So once we've done that, the system will then calculate the applicable taxes, and even if it was hourly or shift basis, the remuneration for each employee. So every time we make changes, we need to go update the remuneration and taxes again. You can also click on one of these amounts to change them, and once you've done that, you can update it again and it will adjust any of the taxes. If we're happy with this, we go ahead and authorize and continue to payment. Now authorizing in this case will be done by me, but we can set it up so that responsibilities are segregated and authorization has to be done by somebody else. This is usually the best practice, so somebody else can also have overview and ensure that everything is correct, usually a manager or the owner or somebody like that. So I'll go ahead and authorize this, and this takes me to the payment stage of this batch. So at this stage I want to pay these amounts. Now what's important is the payment detail comes from the general ledger, because it looks at the employee's account and ensures that we give them the correct cash book payment as opposed to the salary slip. So for this reason we need to do a post to the GL before we do this payment. The amounts that we need to pay to the employees is on the third column, and they add up to a total. So if we do we can either do ACB lists by exporting the specific table, or we can pay online via EFT, and when we do that we probably want to do it in batch and just compare the total to make sure that we are paying the exact amounts and have not made any typos. So before we can actually trust this these amounts, because I can see there's a big variance in one of these, a zero variance basically means that the salary slip and the amount due is the same. If there's a variance, then there may be a reason for it. In most cases there shouldn't be a variance, but there may have been a payday deduction or advance, or a saving that an employee requested, something that is supposed to cause a variance. Let's go and update the GL by clicking this link. Okay, and now the GL shows us some new values. In fact, it looks pretty bad. We got huge variances and we have huge amounts to pay. Now the reason for this is that since this is a test system, I actually have 2 batches for today and I haven't paid any of them. So this Clark Kent has already received, this is his second payslip. And this is the first one that hasn't been paid yet, so the system tells me I owe him this much, even though the current pay slip only says about half that. So once I've paid these amounts, if I'm happy that this is in fact correct, I will then either print the pay slips using pre-printed paper in my inkjet or laser printer, or I will email the payslips. This will email to any employee who's got an email address in their account. It's much easier and quicker. I'll go with that. This batch is now complete. It's been emailed. Should I be required to print payslips for anybody, I can manually do this by just clicking the payslip. It opens in a new tab. I can use the print link to view the payslip and print it. Okay, if we go and click on the tab again, the payroll tab, we'll see these batches. You'll see that there are 2 batches for today, and that's the reason we add those huge variances in our second payroll batch. Keep in mind that the system has a annual tax schedule. So if an employee earned a certain amount of money up to date, then their pay as you earn will be calculated based on that amount. So you cannot create payroll batches in the system and then discard them, or leave them, ignore them, and then create another one. It's going to give you those types of issues. Technically, what we should have done is to go into an incorrect pay batch and remove it, which is actually not possible once we've completed the entire batch. But if we're still in process, we can remove a specific pay batch. Okay, in order to do a pay batch, of course, the first thing we need to do is to set up the employee records.